morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Krieger. I am the head of trust and reputation at Miro, and I will be moderating this panel of wonderful people today. So the title of our panel is Collaborative IT in the Age of Remote Work, how IT and business can partner to meet employees' needs in tech. And we'll be discussing remote work, how it's crucial for employees to have the technology they need to collaborate in the world. I'm going to go ahead and start with doing introductions. Again, my name is Frank. Keith Pemberton from McKesson. Keith, do you mind doing an introduction for us, please, sir?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening. Not sure where you're joining from. I'm Keith Pemberton. I'm Director of Technology Tools and Services for McKesson, providing collaborative technology as well as software development lifecycle technology for the organization. I've been with that company about 13 years, so happy to be here and willing to share my insight.
And then we also have Guidewire CEO, Chet Mandair. Chet?
Hello, good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone. As Frank mentioned, I'm with Guidewire Software. I'm the CIO there. And basically, Guidewire is the platform property and casualty insurers trust to engage, innovate, and grow efficiently. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to sharing our insights and learnings from this panel discussion.
Thanks, Chet. And then finally, we have EA's Vice President of IT, Gopi Parapali. Gopi.
Hi, everyone. This is Gopi Parampalli. I am Vice President of Employee Experience Team at Electronic Arts. My team leads the mission to create a friction-free workplace at EA that enables our employees to do best work of their lives together. That basically entails ensuring that all our employees have the best productivity and collaboration tools in their hands to do this work. Back to you, Frank.
Sounds good. So, COVID 2020, collaborative work. The industry has changed dramatically over the last 8 months. So I would start off the panel discussion with how has IT become more collaborative, say in the last 5 years, specifically around this time period, and how's the pandemic accelerated that trend? I'll open it up to the panel.
I guess I'll take that first. I believe the introduction of cloud technologies, SaaS, public cloud, has contributed to this requiring IT to be much more collaborative, spending less time with infrastructure and focusing more time delivering business outcomes in a secure way. The cloud technologies require new structure, new operating models, new funding models to deliver at the speed customers demand. Looking back, I believe at a macro level, there are 4 sort of the trends which contributed to this. First one is what I call experience-aligned funding. What that means is companies are no longer funding large CapEx projects that take 12 to 24 months to deliver. They're instead funding groupings of customer and employee experiences that can be delivered in an agile way. The second trend is what I call continuous delivery. This is where organizations are speeding up delivery by moving development and delivery resources back to the business to be closer to the customer and employees. Think of agile, DevSecOps, business-led product teams. The third trend is what I call experimentation and innovation. This is in order to better understand what the customer needs, companies are experimenting with technologies before implementing. Think of design thinking, hackathon. We did our hackathon at Guidewire. Now we're taking the learnings and launching a program called Innovation at Guidewire, focusing on internal processes. And then the last one, which is really key, is strategy over governance. Sort of leaning towards lean governance design principles so we can reduce the extra red tape to be agile and still compliant to the enterprise and design standards. So those are sort of, my takeaway on this, Frank.
Thank you, sir. And has anybody seen, I guess, a change in the last 6 to 8 months in terms of how that operates, where we've been doing this, we've been trying to move that forward and bring some methodology into the organizations? Has there been a change, a pacing, disruptions in terms of how this is supposed to be operating?
Yeah, I can take that question. So I would say in the last 6 months, a lot has changed. Fundamentally, everything that we've been doing for the last few decades has changed. I would say we're still experimenting with the new approaches. But before I answer the specifics of the 6 months itself and how it has changed, I just want to take a few minutes to set some context around this. I've worked in a few industries besides the gaming industry that I'm part of today. Gaming industry by nature, because it requires a lot of creativity, a lot of co-located work for a bunch of people to kind of come together, have a lot of agile sessions, a lot of creative sessions to explore the game concepts, and then build the game all the way through in more of an agile fashion than probably you would ever see in other places. The nature of collaboration has shifted over the last few years. I would basically put them in 3 buckets, 3 waves. First wave was what I call like co-location. Everybody is in the same building, same floor, and they all kind of get together, they create a game. Right, so starting from mobile games, even to some of the bigger titles that you see out there, they were getting built that way. Then came the second wave as the companies were. There was a need for them to create more of centers of excellence. So the teams now started cutting across multiple sites and multiple countries and multiple locations. So this is this probably started about, I would say, depending on company, it may have started anywhere from last 3 years up until now, 3 to 5 years. In this model, what used to happen is work used to move around in different time zones, and it used to move around different teams, different countries. So collaboration, the need for collaboration and the tools, collaboration and productivity tools was a lot more higher than the wave 1 that we had. Okay. Now, for example, if I were to take a company like EA, which had, let's say, presence in 26 countries and a whole bunch of, more sites in those countries, this meant, you at any given point in time, multiple locations had to come together to make a game, right? Even if it depends, it changes from title to title, but a number of teams in the countries and the locations that need to come together, the need dramatically shifted and increased when you moved the distributed development. Now I would call this as a third wave, where it is more of a remote and async work environment. When I say remote and async work environment, now instead of 25 countries and probably 50 locations, now you have 10,000 to 15,000 or more locations, because we're all in our offices. We're all coming together from different and trying to basically make this panel work. So simply imagine now you're trying to make a bunch of games. You're in a gaming industry as a company, and now that's going to be extremely difficult. Now, without the proper and usable, easy to use, simple collaboration tools, it is next to impossible to do it. It's not only the collaboration tools that you need, but you also need the tools that enable the async mode. Now, when I say async mode, one of the observations, at least I've had within my own teams and my customers that I work with, we can't be on calls all the time to have a high touch, synchronous conversations and synchronous, development ideas or synchronous decision making. We got to figure out how to basically move some of this to async. Otherwise, you're going to have burnout, and you're also going to have, health issues, right? I mean, the work-life balance issues have increased because there is no separation anymore. Now, if you don't have async development models and the collaboration tools, you're going to have a bigger set of problems. So it's more of a shift. I wouldn't necessarily say it's linear in nature. I would say linear in nature when we shifted from one phase to another phase. But I think as you move into these different phases, you got to figure out the tools that are going to be suitable for that kind of phase.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And Keith, from your perspective in your industry, what have you seen in terms of collaboration? Has it sped up? Have you noticed a gap or a deficit in certain areas?
Yeah, I think in our industry there was already a significant push to get increased collaboration and decrease the amount of waste. Duplicative silos within business units, like in a company the size of McKesson, we grow by and large by acquisition. So sometimes some of the siloed thinking of executing is perpetuated just because of the nature of where they came into the organization. So there was already a push, I think, at the executive level prior to COVID-19 to say, you know what, we need to put more investment into collaborative technology and collaboration, physical collaboration, co-locations, a location strategy where people are more in the physical building with other people that they would collaborate with. I think in the last 6 to 7 months, though, the online and collaborative technology piece has become paramount because of the inability to be face to face. So I think there's definitely been a rapid adoption of whatever works. I think we've deferred to a lot of the business units, the teams, the execution teams to kind of provide that feedback upward of like, hey, you know what? This technology is really working well for our teams, and we're having to be more nimble, and in some instances not maybe follow a formal evaluation process, but to be more of a groundswell around a specific technology that's working well. And then we would, if it works well in one pocket, we may make it more of a global adoption for many other teams, right? So I think there's definitely been an increase, but I think the requirement of collaboration with things like scaled agile and some of the paradigm shifts that were already in place, that was already pushing us towards more of a collaborative ecosystem. But in the last 6 months, that's really moved a lot quicker than probably we would have done otherwise.
Interesting. And in terms of what we consider to be collaboration pre-lockdown, pre-COVID, we all had ideas in our minds of what we need to do our jobs in terms of collaboration. After that, have you seen a deficit or a gap in tooling or collaborative pieces that your organizations had to address?
Yeah, for us, I can speak to that one really quickly. I mentioned scaled agile. Like our company had implemented scaled agile framework, which requires a ceremony called PI planning, where you kind of get all the interested parties, the product owners, the developers. You kind of get them in one big room and you whiteboard kind of the next 3 months. This is what we're going to build. This is how we're going to execute. We're not going to predict the future too far out, but the next 3 months, this is what we're going to do. Technology has had to facilitate that in light of our current circumstances, right? So that's definitely something that we couldn't do in the format that we were doing it, but we had to retrofit that into a more modern ecosystem and have a little bit more of some asynchronous takeaways. There definitely is a synchronous time where everybody's agreeing. We got a concept called debate, decide, commit. We get in a room, we debate, we're going to come up with something before we leave, and then we're going to decide and we're going to commit to deliver that in the next time horizon is. But that process has definitely been different in light of our current circumstances, right? But I think it's been a nice second best to being face to face with some of the collaborative technology we've employed. I think there's always going to be, you're never going to be able to replace face to face. I think with video and other technologies, it is a close second best, and I think we're trying to employ that wherever possible. So that's kind of our take.
Makes perfect sense. And then one of the topics that we were going to discuss as well is kind of a bottom-up approach, where folks within the organization pushing collaboration upward towards management, as opposed to a singular decision being done at the top and being pushed down through the organization. Have any of you had any experiences around that in the recent times or before that, where you're empowering people within your organizations to help bring those things upward for your visibility?
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
For us at Guidewire, for example, in the current environment, having a virtual whiteboarding tool, Miro actually started with our UI UX team. There were different teams who were sort of experimenting with different tools, like Keith mentioned. And so that sort of rose up, and where we sort of ended up making that sort of as an enterprise tool, because it sort of started at the ground level and was very well received. And so it became part of our collaboration toolkit. And so the idea is we're always looking for ideas to see what works better from an experience perspective. So that's very common for us at Guidewire. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the same thing, but the only thing I would add there is it's a combination of both. It's not. I wouldn't necessarily say there is a tops down and then there's a groundswell and they gotta be at friction with each other. What happens is if you keep your eyes and ears open and listen to the workflows through various mechanisms, keep an eye on the software that's being used, or when in your conversations, figure out what problem are they trying to solve, and what tools are out there that they think are best suited to solve those problems. If you listen quite a bit, you get a sense of the tools that they're using and how they're using those tools. So I can quote few tools that came into EA in that format. Zoom is one of them. Slack is another one. Miro is another one, and I can go on and go on. But we also have solutions that are enterprise specific. They're not. For example, you won't have employees come and say, "Hey, I want to use Oracle CRM or SAP ERP," and they won't, right? I mean, but the organization needs it to run their business. So we do both, as long as you are clear about what you're trying to solve for. For example, in an enterprise tool set, you're trying to drive the standardization, run the business in a certain way. And with the collaboration tools and the productivity tools, you're trying to look for experience-centric tools. So it's for experience-centric tools, it's like crowdsourcing the opinions of which tool is a better one out there is what creates the groundswell you need. And that's basically the approach that we use. Very similar to what your organization uses out there.
Yeah, and I would just one thing I would add too. I think on our side, it is definitely the groundswell. We do formalized RFPs and evaluations on certain products. What we tend to do in my space is to look for the overlap between products, which is kind of becoming interesting as certain products play in multiple spaces, but they're not necessarily a master of all domains. So we do try to minimize the footprint of what we're using in our collaborative or software development lifecycle so that there's not too much overlap, right? So that can make it a little bit more. So sometimes we're doing an RFP internally amongst tools that are already in use. It's kind of a bake-off between, three products that play in the same space. So I think simplification, especially in an organization our size, and making sure people are going to the same place to look for the same collateral, just to increase reuse, increase our time to market. So I think that's the other tension that we manage. I think we do the groundswell, but sometimes we have so much groundswell happening that we get flooded with redundant products, and we have to make some decisions there. So I think you always have that kind of tension to manage as well as with an organization the size of the ones represented here.
Well, and Keith, you mentioned groundswell, and I know that we were talking before around about the groundswell within IT. Can you kind of walk us through, I guess the meaning of that and how you watch for it and how you, I guess, ensure that the organization is taking proper steps, moving in a pattern as opposed to just randomly grabbing things?
Yeah, it's a little bit kind of art rather than science, but it's typically my team being established in the company for some time, we have kind of an audience with a lot of the business units that are executing some of our critical initiatives. And so a lot of times when they do find some product that they think is helpful or they're using in a small area, they'll propose it or bring it to our team and say, will you manage it for me? You know what I mean? Like we like it, but we don't want to manage it, but we want to use it, but we don't want any of the other problems, right? So that's typically how I'm of a product that is gaining traction. Sometimes it comes through an acquisition where, our procurement team will make note to me that, hey, we have these kind of inbound licenses that are now McKesson owned, but we're formerly with another company. So I'll get wind of it through one of those types of channels. And then we can start to assess the efficacy of what it's being used for. And And sometimes that corresponds to a gap that I'm already trying to fulfill. Or, maybe someone else has already asked me about, hey, I need some collaborative technology, but then we have an inbound contract with something that could potentially fill that gap. So we'll then expand that to a broader user base. So it's really kind of through a variety of channels that I'll be made known of this particular product, or sometimes I'm made aware of it through integration requests. Like an example, Jira is kind of where we track a lot of the issues and the work that we're prioritizing, and they'll want to integrate a collaborative tool with that product to kind of formalize the work planning process, et cetera. So that's usually how I'm made aware of it, and then we'll make a decision on whether that has a bigger use case, or is there something else that we prefer them to use. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does make sense. And in terms for the panel itself, again, around this kind of question, has policies or procedures changed over the last 12 months around this to allow people to bring in different applications that may have been a no-no before, or the process for doing that has changed within your organizations?
I would say...
Go
ahead.
Chet,
I'll just say quickly.
No worries. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I was going to say, just the main thing I would say is this cloud applications. I would just highlight that. I think we were mentioning that earlier. I think historically with a healthcare company, it would be pretty unlikely, probably 36 months, maybe 48 months ago, that we would run cloud-based applications, especially vendor-managed cloud. We would typically run into some regulatory issues or challenges. It seems like the industry has changed a lot in that regard, which allows us to kind of get started a lot sooner with some of these products, and our time to value is a lot shorter. So I'd say specifically around the way that we consume these applications, and we've become more of a cloud-first company, which historically that was not the case. And so it would probably be the exception rather than the rule that we'd be running a cloud product. I think that whole paradigm is flipped on its head as far as the way that our company at this point.
Interesting. And Chet, speaking of Guidewire, you mentioned that you used the VP MOM, Vision, Principle, Methods, Obstacles, and Measurements framework that originated out of Salesforce. How does this framework inform the work that you do within BizTech?
Yeah, no, great question here. I've been here at Guidewire along with our CEO for about a year. We both came from Salesforce. And one of the things we really liked what we did at Salesforce is this concept of, VP MOM, which is really for us here. We have defined what a 3-year, 4-year vision is. Then on a yearly basis, we basically, this framework, what is our vision for the year? What are the 4 or 5 things we're going to go do? Those are called methods, and how are we going to measure the things we said we're going to go do? Are we actually doing it? And what are the obstacles which come in the way? So we do that at the leadership level. Each of the teams also ideate. So the idea is of our VP MOM defined for the year, along with my team, business technology team, and so then so that does the alignment at the topmost level, and so there are some core initiatives which everybody is doing together. And then that sort of forms the alignment. Then on a quarterly basis, we review that. We open that up to every employee in the company to see the progress we're making, the alignment. Really, the idea here is we want to make sure every team member at Guidewire feels connected to the vision, has full transparency, what our priorities are, what progress we're making, what challenges and opportunities we have. So that is a great way. It has really helped us have that alignment at the topmost level. And so that's something, this is our second year where we have sort of embraced the concept. And this year what we're doing is it starts at the C level. Then also each of the departments have their VP MOM. And then the idea is in next 2 or 3 years, we can roll it out where every employee is sort of connected to what we're doing. Pretty cool concept, very similar to others, KIs or MBOs. But this is something which is working really well for us. And of course, we have sort of used Miro for brainstorming some of those ideas and sort of use the Miro board to help us with our strategic alignment and sort of the discussion.
And Chet, you mentioned, being connected as opposed to, say, just doing collaboration. Connectivity being, that we are actually working. Collaboration is a function of that. But I'm curious to know from the panel's perspective over this period of time, connectivity, where we have that ability to walk into a room and say hello and ask some questions and do a quick 2-minute discussion. Have you found that missing, or that element, that spark has disappeared, or have the tools that you've put in place been able to bridge that gap?
I think for us, at least this is my, our learning. I think our shift to work from anywhere was very easy because we had all the tools and everything else. But I think what we are learning is we need to focus more around designing around experiences, so we have less friction. I mean, there are tools available to go do the work, but if we take the human-centric approach to it and really design around the employee journey based on the personas, that is the work we have started, and of course keeping empathy in mind. So that's key takeaway for us, and that's the work we're sort of working through. I'll let the other panel speakers share their thoughts on how they're approaching this.
Yeah, it's mixed. I don't think the need for connecting with somebody in person on physically in the same space, I don't think it has gone away. I think it'll come back when it is safe to come for everybody to come back. So I don't think that has gone away. Having said that, there is still a need to do it. For example, when I was in the office, I would probably bump into somebody in the corridor or near the water cooler or coffee station. Now you got to be intentional about it. Being intentional about keeping the connections that you had and creating new connections. That is very important. That's very vital. That basically becomes the difference between, somebody who's going to have relationships at the end of this period or not. Okay, so because if you think about how work gets done, there is a lot of work that gets done because you have taken time to build the relationships and you have built the trust as a result of it, and you can't forget that still needs to continue. Now, having said that, you can't do it at the same level that you would do in person in a physical space now. Right? I mean, now you're going to have to schedule meetings. Now, for example, I can't go schedule meetings with like 20 people that I would probably bump in the corridor in my office if I were in the office. But you can be very intentional about it. You can plan through this. And there are also tools like, async tools. Async tools play a very significant role. I can't emphasize that enough. There are strategy sessions, there are talent sessions, there are financial sessions, there are innovation and operation sessions where they don't happen in physical space with 20 people in a same room together anymore. They happen over multiple time zones from different places. And that's where the async tools play a critical and a vital role. If you take time to learn these tools and how to get the value out of these tools by creating processes around them in everything that you do, you're going to get a lot of value out of them. If we think of these tools as just tools and don't incorporate them in the life of somebody, who worker of certain personas, then it's not going to go anywhere.
And Gopi, you mentioned, we need to learn these tools. Have you found that within your organization it was difficult to get people to embrace the tool or learn it? Were there certain areas of the organization that were better at it or not so good at it?
I don't necessarily see any patterns where it's difficult for people or they don't want to use it. It's just that nobody has shown it to them. I think of every product as a success only when it's adopted. So which means you got to be very thoughtful in rolling out the products. You got to think of them as marketing campaigns. You got to deliberately set up the adoption drives, so that you can use all kinds of techniques, all kinds of tools to drive the adoption, whether it is hosted webinar formats to setting up channels for communication, async communications, email campaigns, recruiting influencers from each of the org in the organization and use them to build the awareness of the tools and how to use those tools. It is less about the tools, it's about how you can use those tools to solve the problems that you want to solve. So you can use a range of techniques to basically create a very thoughtful adoption and a good adoption drive across the teams in the company. As long as you do it, they work well. If you don't do it, it's anybody's guess how they're going to turn out.
It's true. It's very true. And then, Gopi, at EA, your employees are doing extremely creative work that's also technical. How do you find the technology solutions, I guess, would accommodate both of those skill sets? How do you merge that creative and technical piece?
So there are two parts to this. So I'm going to answer this in two parts. First one is, I've been in the software business and as a technologist for about last 26 years, and I worked in multiple industries. And I assure you, all users pretty much want the same thing. They want friction-free experience with their tools. They want the tools that are simple to use and simple to collaborate, especially when it comes to collaboration. There are a few attributes of tools that are liked by everybody, right? Whether it's technical folks or whether it is creative folks, you basically see that there are certain common attributes. First one, they should focus on solving the user problems. Number one, specifically completing the user tasks in no time. Right? I'll give you an example. You don't show up at IT website because it's a Yahoo news portal or CNN news portal, and you don't want to spend more time there than necessary. You just come there to log in a ticket, resolve your issue, and go back. Right? I'm just giving a simple example. Now, I should be able to do that quickly. And now let's take it one step further. If I'm really good at managing the IT experience, then I should be able to proactively identify the issues before they happen for our users. There are technologies out there. We just need to stitch them together to make that happen. Now, these are just some simple examples on how you got to have tools that are focused on experience, that are focused on creating a friction-free experience, and then you got to have tools that are simple to use, high quality. As long as you have them, you can basically they can bring all kinds of bent of minds together. So I don't necessarily see that as a problem. Now, there are a few things that are specific. For example, as you go into technology areas versus creative, there are tools that are specifically technology teams use. I'll just give an example. Let's say CI/CD tools, and an artist may not use that tool, but they are mutually exclusive. The objective of the tool is not to bring people together in a collaborative fashion, but it's a productivity tool. It's basically the tool that you use to get the job done. The collaboration tools, I've seen always them sharing some of these attributes: experience, simplicity, quality, that kind of stuff.
Perfect. In terms of, I guess, building or cultivating the right mindset within the organization for collaboration, we've all been there where we're working in an office. It's very organic. Have you run into challenges in terms of bringing the organization to that mindset where we need to perform collaboration? It is a different way of working. It was mentioned on the panel, that organic ability to have a discussion after a meeting or before a meeting and just gather facts or clarify points is not so relevant today because we have Zoom. The Zoom call ends and everybody goes about their way. Have you found the organizations to need adjustment in how that works? In terms of the way you think about meetings and the way work is being done.
I believe so. I think the current environment has brought in some of those things, right? The empathy piece is very important because people are working from home. They have kids, they have family members. You have kids trying to do Zoom, distance learning, and all that. So there are a couple of simple tips we are doing, and again, we're learning. For example, we're trying to make sure the meetings are brief, right? Check-ins are important. We're trying to do 20-minute meeting versus an hour meeting, right? We're being very flexible, whereby if, somebody has to take care of their loved ones, friends and family, they're able to do that. We're also making sure, we have a session called Ask Me Anything with our CEO on a weekly basis where sort of the entire team comes together. So I think just creating time for the team members to also talk about what's going on and share what they're feeling, I think that's becoming very important for us. And as it was mentioned earlier, teams are basically looking for, simple tools which provide collaboration simpler. They're looking for incorporating experiences in this environment, make it easy to find the information fast, and open and transparent communication. So those are some of the things, we're doing a lot of mindfulness exercises and other in the virtual mode, because as one of the panel members mentioned earlier, even though the productivity is getting better in this work from anywhere, people are not spending time commuting, but the psychological, is very important along with the physical being. So those are some of the things we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. It can be wearing. And Keith, from your organizational perspective, have you had to make any changes in terms of how you communicate with employees? How that communication actually functions?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think the word that comes to mind is intentionality. I think the fact that we don't have those random bump intos or these casual conversations any longer in the way that they formerly were, you really have to carve out time. And I think even as a leader, I'm employing my teams to, hey, have an unscheduled conversation or schedule a 15-minute block to catch up with people maybe that you don't work with all the time. I think there's an intentionality that's required in order to kind of foster some of the relationships that you're kind of getting starved for in this current climate. But if you're intentional about it, I think you can still achieve some of those objectives and kind of develop some relationships. So I think it's more difficult for new employees as they come into an organization during this climate and just trying to make sure that things are available. I think we echo a lot of things that I heard from the other panelists in terms of our CEO creating touch points to discuss what's going on, how the things are changing, giving you plenty of notice to plan for family changes and things like that. So that this environment is definitely unique, and I think it requires this on purpose type of attitude where you're seeking out the different connections that you require to kind of be successful in your job, and also just to connect. I think even we've done things where we'll have like virtual happy hours and things after, like just dial in just so people can see other faces and kind of connect. So I think it's important that organizations foster that type of environment so that people don't feel kind of out on an island. And we can't just look at it purely on execution numbers and how we're delivering. While that's been good, I think it's important for that human aspect to just keep that connectivity. So I think it's top down, side to side. You have to foster that and encourage folks to, connect with others on a regular basis so that they're just not so alone during this time. I think that's been a real challenge of this day over the last 6 months.
No, it's it. Absolutely. And, one of the final questions we might have around this is, what are you doing within your organizations to instill trust of the IT organization to employees, especially ones that have come on maybe remotely during this time? They may never have met that person. They may never have seen you other than through a Zoom call. How is that trust being put through the organization? And that's open for everyone.
I can start. I think for us, I think it's I think a little bit of it's historical, right? You have that, but that gets more challenging in organizational changes. So I think there's somewhat of an internal marketing campaign that you're always sharing what items or options are available to employees. I think frequently asked questions sessions, We have like tech share or tech, collaborative things where people can join in to learn how things are happening around the organization. I think we have a whole communications team that, will broadcast communications on kind of mutually needed information for folks to kind of get their hands on it. Intranet sites are very important that, cascade information about, different programs and things that are available to employees. So I think we leave no stone unturned in terms of the collaborative. We kind of communicate through other leaders, right? Like as a leader, you're communicated through, not communicated to. So as information comes to you at your level, it's up to you to cascade that to your team. So that's a message that's constantly, pushed out so that, folks are fine. But it is via a variety of channels, you know what I mean? And I think it's more difficult in this climate, but I think that intentionality word comes up, that you have to really go out of your way to make sure that, teams, groups have the information they need to go out and deliver and execute and be successful. So that's really been a real emphasis for our team. But again, I think none of it's by accident, right? Like I think a lot of our communications teams are working very hard to make sure that information is not lost.
Yeah, no, I concur with. I think it's taking extra effort from every one of us. The voice of the customer, the voice of the employees, right, is becoming very important. Making sure we're able to provide the needs, understand the needs, provide the right tool set, the right way to engage, whatever omni-channel experience they come through. But at the same time, I think the COVID has also emphasized the importance of security, being able to work in a secure way. It has led to large phishing attempts, a lot of other risk which comes from working from anywhere environment. Being able to provide webinar, how to secure your home network, how to prioritize, right? Just listening to them, taking their input and ideas and baking that into the services and the outcomes we're providing them.
Mm-hmm. And then another question that we have actually from folks out here is, we need to seek IT approval for applications, and it's been difficult to do this from a bottom-up approach. Is there any advice anybody can give here in terms of what is the right way to get those put into the organization?
So I take a first crack at that. I think what we've seen is just, kind of building a little business case of what you see the value proposition of that tool is, and then kind of escalating it up the channels is typically how I've seen it done. Folks will basically articulate what the business problem that the particular product is solving, how it's benefiting their organization, and then maybe spin it from that perspective on how that could potentially provide value to other teams. The other thing that works in our organization is sometimes number of teams will kind of get together. Like for instance, before a product comes to my team as a global support group, it's typically used by more than one business unit or more than one area, right? So that if 3 or 4 different teams are using a specific application that's kind of got this groundswell, it really begs the case of how can we get better agreement terms. And I think sometimes speaking in the terms that leadership understands, money, the bottom line, like if we have separate siloed agreements by smaller organizations with a given vendor, likely we're not getting the economies of scale that's really required for that particular product. So a lot of times by putting that business case together and trying to let the math speak for itself, I think we'd be in better position if we negotiated an enterprise deal with X vendor because we're using it in 6 different areas of the company. That's usually been pretty compelling in my history in terms of getting it, standardized and brought into the fold.
Keith, I think what we're doing is we're taking a 2-pronged approach. One is, like I said, the voice of the employee, where we have cross-functional representation from different teams on continuous dialogue on ideas, what outcomes they're looking to solve. The second is also there are tools like CASB tools, which we can sort of see, what SaaS applications are employees logging into, and then proactively trying to understand, what is the use case there? Are we providing something which doesn't meet that need? And then having that dialogue, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure those applications are secure from an enterprise perspective. They have the right, security posture. Whether it's single sign-on, MFA, enterprise document, DLP, data loss, all that. But that is the two prong we're taking, and it's sort of working pretty well. And then that team comes back and says, "Hey, we evaluated this. This meets our need," and then we make that as an enterprise and add that to our collaboration toolkit.
And then
pretty similar here as well. I don't think I have much to add here. The only thing I would say is if you find a tool and you think that is solving your problem, verify if it is solving somebody else's problem as well, because typically the companies don't go out and just invest in tools that work just for one person. And as you're kind of doing that, peeling the onion process, just ask other questions. What problems does it solve? Why should people buy it? And does it help you make more productive, or does it solve the problem that that's going to translate into better experience for our customers, or is it just for employees? And if it's so, how is it? So just if you like a tool and if you can't live without it, then I would say just go find out these things, and then it's easy. Once you have some of this information, it's easy to have the conversations with your own manager and also with your IT counterparts. That's what I would advise if somebody is looking to make a case for a tool that they really like.
Perfect sense. Let me ask a question this way. What has gone better as a result of us all being stuck at home? So we've been talking about the challenges we've been facing. What actually improved as a result of this?
One simple thing I
can spend more time. No, go ahead, Kit.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I spend more time with the kids now than before. Spending time with the family was a luxury before. So I used to travel quite a bit for my role. Now I don't have to do that. I get to see them every day, and I just walk out like 2 minutes of commute or 2 seconds of commute, and I'm in their life. So, but it's also negative on the other side. Sometimes once in a while, but most of the time that's awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, no problem. I think I agree with that, echo that, definitely getting to spend more time with my kids and family. I think also I would just mention, for us, there's always been somewhat of a disconnection because there's always people in different geographies with offshore and other things like that. But with everybody remote, you're kind of all equal. Because I don't know if you've ever been in a conference call where like 70% of the people are in the room and the people on the phone are sitting there. And it's just not an equal, it just feels unequal, right? So I think with everybody being in the same circumstance, that actually makes it a very even. And so I was mentioning our culture, debate, decide, and commit. Like, I think having that kind of equal footing, I think it enables some better dialogue in that setting, especially when you have kind of a mixed mode conference. So that's something that I've noticed is a little bit more positive.
And I believe I agree with both Gopi and Keith. I think I'm also finding that we're being more productive, right? I'm not spending time getting in my car. I don't have to fly to a different location. I can get on a Zoom call, talk to one of our customers, or talk to our team members in a different location. I think that's also and it has been proven that the productivity has increased. But also we have to take care of the other aspects, right? The mental aspect, the psychology, welfare of the employees.
Very true. Very, very true. We're running out of time. So I'm going to ask, we'll go in the same order that we did introductions. Any closing advice, Keith, that you might give us in terms of what we could do to, I guess, be more collaborative, approach applications in terms of bottom up for management? advice in that vein?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of it, but I think, like I said, the voice of the customer, voice of the employee, in my case, if you have an internal customer or external customer, understand what's effective, have a way of measuring which applications are getting the job done or could potentially get the job done, and make sure you can articulate that so that you get the right products to kind of create that friction-free environment, right? So lots of choices out there. We're spoiled for choice, but sometimes you got to have, I think, one, you want to find the right products and hear the voice of the customer or voice of your employee. And then I think, two, you want to be able to distill that down to its simplest form. Don't have 5 products in one area or 10 products in another area, because that kind of distills kind of the collaboration that you're seeking, because they're all in their own little fiefdoms. So I think simplicity, look at, less is more, I think, as a concept, you know what I mean, in terms of what tools I'm moving across this chain to make it as simple of an experience for your employees. And then make sure that you have a really broad communication and training available, so that, because like I said, if a tool isn't well adopted, it's really not as useful as it could be. And you're leaving, some potential on the table there. So I think that's really important. But I'd say definitely listen to your customers, listen to whoever the voice is, the experience. Make sure you have a simplistic set, make a choice, tough choice, Pepsi, Coke type of thing, pick one. And then, and then make sure they can learn and get educated on how to use it. And then hopefully the ease of use in the product is pretty intuitive too. That always helps as well.
Thank you, sir. Chet, any advice for us on that side?
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe those 4 or 5 key points, right? One, of course, we all, talked about putting customer and employees in the middle of your processes, designing around them versus, having employees and customers figure out how they fit in the process, right? I think digitizing processes is very important. A lot of the companies with paper-based or, they're sort of struggling. So here's an opportunity to digitize your processes. Use tools that make collaboration seamless and frictionless, where the experience comes into play. As Gopi mentioned, the asynchronous communication is key. Make it easy to find information fast. Otherwise, a lot of our support teams, whether they're HR or IT or other, they're just getting bombarded with all these requests. So make it simple. And then the last one is open and transparent communication, right? It is key. So those are sort of my 4 takeaways.
Oh, perfect, sir. And Gopi, any advice, sir, for us before we break up?
Yeah, I think Keith and Chet have covered most of it. So I'll just leave with two things to kind of think about. One is about nature of work. When I still remember when we started moving, all the equipment to homes of our employees and helping them kind of work from home. We just replicated how work got done, if they were kind of working from outside. But as time evolved, what we are realizing is there's a lot of burnout and there is a lot of stress that's building up. So nature of work has to be a combination of async and as well as sync. I don't think you'll ever get it async, but be thoughtful about it. Be very deliberate about it. Spend some time, thinking through the work that happens in your organization, and then be deliberate about it. I was talking about this with your execs. Here at Miro, it is just the tool is not going to be helpful. Tools are tools; they'll solve a problem, but you got to help the tools fit into the process. How work gets done, you got to fit them in. So that's number one. Number two is just make sure that the dialogue around the whole remote work, is based on empathy. We are still in a pandemic. We are not working from home. That's not the primary directive. We are living in a pandemic, and we are trying to get the work work done. So if you pay attention to that, then you can design better processes. I think to Chet and Keith's earlier points, this is a time that we all need to show empathy as leaders and as members of organizations that we all live in.
Very nicely said, all.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Keith, Gopi, Chet, thank you very much for sitting in this panel. I really, really appreciate it. And on behalf of Miro, thank you all again. And for those listening, there will be a recording made available next week. So please feel free to download it. Links will be generated by our teams. Again, thanks to the panel. It was very, very informative and very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.